Well, again, everybody, and welcome back to this evening edition of the Trick Podcast of Joey, episode 3 or 4 or 5, I don't know. Is marriage and slash relationship about happiness? I was watching one of my favorite podcasts on this topic earlier today, and it got me inspired and thinking as I was hearing the different responses of mostly people in their late 20s and 30s, from duty to it's about compromise to about some. I think we're saying that you can't compromise because then nobody's happy, and then a couple of these people on the podcast were mentioning older generations and how they see it more as, yeah, I guess more as a responsibility and something that you can't always feel happy, but you still have a duty to be faithful, to respect each other. Got me thinking about all this. And then another person on the panel said that they have no idea, as younger people. They really have no idea what a relationship or a marriage is about. And it got me thinking how that maybe was the most honest response of them all. And this, I think it was a young man, maybe it was a young lady. He was saying that he doesn't have any, his parents are divorced, and he doesn't have any friends whose parents are married. He was talking about how I think he talked to someone on a taxi, and how this man was in his 60s and he gave him some good advice. And I guess his point was that's how bad things are for younger people. They don't really even know what a marriage is really about. And so it got me thinking. First, I thought, well, I know what it is. We've been happily married, my wife and I, for almost 30 years, 27 years of actual marriage and 2 years of dating. So 27 years and then 2 of dating. One woman, faithful to one person, never been unfaithful. We've been committed to each other for 30 years. And we have a family that has I don't want to say successful family. God has been faithful. We have focus on our family, focus on our marriage. We date, we go out, we communicate daily. But here's my point. Even that isn't really, I mean, that's good advice, right? I think we should learn from people that are happy, right? If you want to lose weight, you're not going to come and see me or someone that is out of shape. You're going to go see someone who is in shape. And so it got me thinking how glad I was that we had a marriage class here about a month ago here at our home. My wife and I, Rochelle and I, were coaching or just simply sharing some tips and habits that we have. And that was also very helpful. But I guess what it really got me thinking about is how we need the scriptures. It can't be about even our own experiences, because everyone has a certain experience. And of course, it's good to learn from human life and human experiences. But it got me thinking of 1 Corinthians 13 and when Paul, let's see what happened there. Okay, I think I just lost audio there for a second. I think we're good. When Paul was asked about what does happiness mean or love, he then, of course, gave us 1 Corinthians 13. And the Corinthian church, the Corinthians, the city of Corinth, a port city, it was a promiscuous city, promiscuous church. Even though these were men of God, women of God, there was a lot of infidelity, and they had a lot of customs that were from the different Greek gods, Venus, and all the different celebrations and feasts that were basically to the god of fertility. And you could say it was like Vegas. Corinth, you could say, was the modern day, maybe OnlyFans, if you could modernize that. And so Paul's words, as a non-married man, not as a family man, he couldn't speak from, I've been faithful to my wife for 30 years. He couldn't say I haven't been unfaithful, or I haven't been with other women in 30 years. He had none of that. And yet he gave us an amazing advice to a society that, like today, was really all over the place. And remember, this was to Christians. This wasn't just to pagans in the city of Corinth. This was to the church. And so obviously these are things that we need to think about and to talk about. because we need, I think, guidance today, whether it's a young person or someone my age who is trying to understand more about their marriage, or someone who is maybe saying, I never want to get married. And that was another thing that this podcast was talking about, how young people just don't want to get married because of the same thing. Maybe they live together, they have multiple partners, they maybe go in and out of relationships. And again, we're talking about people in church. And so, or maybe they do want to get married. Obviously, us as Hispanics, we value family, but then you have a ton of infidelity, right? I mean, novelas and maybe even our parents. I mean, I believe my grandfather, yes, he was unfaithful, but my father was faithful till the end. Same with my mom. Same with my Rochelle's parents. They also were married for 50 plus years, faithful to just one man, one woman. But that's not everyone's experience. And like people say, who's to say that they were happy, even if they were married? And so Paul, back to Paul, he, of course, was speaking on God's behalf, right? And so you could listen to his words, the words of God, and really learn a lot, because the proof is in the pudding. When you read 1 Corinthians 13, especially, which I want to look at here now, you can't deny the wisdom of 1 Corinthians 13 because of the context, because of who the Corinthians were, in spite of Paul. And this is important to say, these men were just normal men. They were not walking on water, right? Peter tried and that didn't work. But my point is that this is not advice that's coming from necessarily a man who knows or who knew what it was like to be married. In fact, Paul, speaking of his own experience, advised to not get married because it would get in the way of ministry. Jesus wasn't married. David was, but then you get into the Old Testament and the mess with regards to marriage, right? Multiple wives, multiple concubines, all kinds of stuff, incest, and I mean, drunkenness, and of course, infidelity. And you have so much stuff. There's a fly in here, or maybe it's Sanculo. And so, but nonetheless, you can have that. By the way, make sure that you like this video, comment, subscribe, especially if you are on Facebook, on YouTube, or Instagram, Twitch, or Twitter. Like, comment, subscribe. It'll help this channel grow. We only have like 1 or 2 people watching, but if you interact with the video, leave a comment, then this video will get in front of more people. So that will help, that will help the algorithm. So let's look at what Paul said, right? Let's look at what the isn't going well. And so that's why we begin to think of all these other things, like, should I stay for the kids? Should I stay in the house? Should I sue him? Should I be? But when we go back to the basics of love and what love is, patience and kindness and self-bearing, and not rude, not unkind, but bears all things, hopes all things. Imagine if we had more examples of hopeful marriages. That's what we hope to be, Rochelle and I. It's to give you hope. So that if you're a young couple and you're struggling, that you have hope. I had a couple that we were coaching, actually, which is a young man. And he was telling us, he said, I don't have any models in my life when it comes to marriage. My pastors haven't been married very long. They don't have kids, or maybe their kids are really small. Nothing wrong with this. Again, I'm not saying there's something wrong with that. My point is that this young man, who was a high value spiritual leader, a leader in the church, he felt hopeless. Like, where do I go? I asked him, where do you go for wisdom? He's like, I don't know. He said, maybe you. Because we lack so many examples, and we need more people like me. We need to, and that's why Rochelle and I, and as much as we can, we give ourselves to not just being stars, or, let me sing and preach and have churches of 5,000, things that I used to be into in my youth, I guess. Now I'd rather be an example and give young people hope, especially in their 20s, so that as they get into relationships, same with our children, right? They are now in their 20s. I want to give them hope. And I think that more than anything, not that events and amazing worship services, I still love that. I love preaching. I love singing. I love the events. I love church. But in this day and age where the crisis is at the discipleship level, I have given myself to disciple making. If I never preach again, it's fine with me. I haven't preached in a year. I just preached for the first time in a year just a couple of weeks ago. I loved it, but it's not what I'm thirsting for, or the stage, or to be in charge, or to have a title, things that I did used to want. But I've realized that the crisis is a crisis of models and of examples. Young people really want to learn how to get things right, how to have their marriages and their young families succeed. They truly want that, and that's a beautiful thing. And I admire young people that, which is most, that say, David, would you just show me the way, teach me what you know. I love our church because they want to learn from us, from anyone really that would give them advice that they respect, that they want to be like. I mean, that's what I did. And we, like I said, our generation did have our parents. I had my parents, and I still have my mom as role models, and many people in church. And many of my friends, some of them screwed up. I can think of 2 or 3 of the friends that I grew up with that are now my age, that their marriages are dissolved, or just a lot of things went bad. But I can think of others who, like me and Rochelle, we have, again, I don't like the word succeeded, but we have, I don't like the word endured either, because it's not like some marathon where we're sweating and in pain. But we have, loved each other. That's really all I can think of. It's just like 1 Corinthians 13 says, we have loved. We have chosen to love in the 1 Corinthians 13 way, with the help of the Holy Spirit. Imperfectly, maybe 80% of the time. Sometimes maybe 60, sometimes maybe 90, but let's just say 80%, 90% of the time. We have loved in a 1 Corinthians kind of way. And we don't rest on that. We have to do that every day, because we know that the gravity, or the pull, the Newton's third law of thermodynamics, is that things decay if we leave them alone. Our bodies, our marriages, our relationships, our cars, our finances, everything recedes. It dies unless you keep growing and feeding it. And that's why and it really isn't a burden, because it comes down to, I just love being with my wife. I really do enjoy her. She likes me too. All these things are important. And I think young people today, I like it when they say that we were friends first. I think that's a very good way to look at marriage. Your first friends. I don't mean friend zoning. I mean that you enjoy being in each other's presence. I enjoy to this day, 30 years later, just being with Rochelle. We were just together in the room next door for like 3 hours, just talking on our phones, crying, praying, laughing. She's watching a show, I'm watching a podcast, and we'll just talk about it and go back. And then we took a nap and just being with each other out of true friendship and love, patience, kindness, confession when we sin, when we mess up. I mess up all the time. I can't say all the time like, oh, I'm some horrible man. I mess up as often as anyone. But it's about saying confession. It's about, saying I'm sorry. Having men in my life that I can go and say, hey, man, when it comes to sexuality, when it comes to greed, when it comes to power, all the things that we as men deal with, here's my list. Here's my update. Same thing with her when it comes to whatever, being mad or being upset or fear or anger or frustration. She has her friends. Women of God, men of God for me. All that stuff is important. Accountability, service to God. Yes, all that now is the outgrowth. The fruit, the result of a marriage that is focused on Jesus, that is focused on love. 1 Corinthians 13 kind of love. Well, I think that's all I have for now. Thank you again. Catch me on the next stream. Share, like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.